It's great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me. We are really excited to be here, and by we I mean AT&T, talking about experiential marketing, which, like several of the earlier presenters, is true to my heart. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what I really want to talk to you guys about is transformation, and not just transformation in the sense of brand transformation, experiential transformation. We're gonna touch on all of those, but also personal transformation. And I think I have 15 minutes, which, by the way, is the shortest presentation I have ever made in my entire life. So I'm gonna go really quickly, and then there's a Q&A, so we can double click into anything that you guys really want to talk about. So the first part of this is I want you guys to walk away with something besides the work itself. And so I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. So this is my mom and I. Typical presentation, right, of like really old photographs. But I promise I'll bring it back to why we're all here today. So this is my mom and I guess I was a year old, and we're standing in front of our house. I grew up in Detroit, so this is literally on 8 Mile, not like around 8 Mile, I mean on 8 Mile in Detroit. And shortly after I was born, my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar. So I grew up with, as an only child, with just my mom and I taking care of my mom for most of my life. And so combination of going to school, design school, I'm a designer, will always be a designer, taking care of mom. My first house was actually the same thing. So it was actually a single wide trailer. But I loved having my own space. I loved the idea of walking into an environment, being able to make it my own, and also invest in something. You don't often think about an investment being a mobile home, but I made it work for me. I repainted it, I put on a deck, I did a few things, and then a few years later, I got to invest. I moved from that into this really creepy haunted house. It's Halloween. This house fits. It's really dark, but it's not any better when you see it full brightness. It's a very scary house. This was a foreclosure. It's around 2008 in Detroit when it was really rough. The automotive industry was being bailed out. You guys remember those times. It was pretty rough. So I bought a $200,000 house for $40,000 and got an FHA loan. And by rough, I mean basically nothing in it, basically, including no kitchen. And this is very common with a lot of those flips back in the day. But I put a team together. I taught myself about how to transform the space, and I used my creative vision and design skills. And a couple years later, I turned it into something that was at least resellable. It had a kitchen. It had some fundamentals. It looked like a home that a family could live in. And I bought the house, which I really wanted. Which was a mid-century modern house. So I bought this house from the woman who bought it, the woman who built it. So Dorothy turned 90 the day that we closed on the house. So this was her lifelong house. And she had all of these stories about, literally my agent said, you got to show up and you got to talk to Dorothy, you got to tell her about what you're going to do at the house, what you're not going to do at the house, because she's only going to sell it to somebody who's really going to respect the house. And I was like, I got this, don't worry about it. Like, of all the people she could sell this house to, I'm like the best candidate. So I met Dorothy, and we walked around the house, and it was a wealth of family history and beautiful storytelling, and it really made me feel like I was honored to have this house. But the interesting thing is that Dorothy really never evolved it, even though it was a mid-century house. It was still kind of bad mid-century, not good mid-century. It was more 80s and 90s, but also untouched. So it was a really well-maintained house, even though aesthetically it left some things to be desired. A couple years later, again with a really great partnership with contractors and really thinking about what this house could be, we transformed it into a true mid-century modern house, and a house that I miss very much. I didn't want to move. It was one of those houses that you want to be buried in the backyard. It was not a big house, but it was really special. I loved Halloween because the kids would come up to the glass door and they'd look in and see all the Herman Miller furniture, and the parents would be like, hey, that's Mad Men. It looks like Mad Men in there. But it was a really special house, and I love this idea of transforming it from what it was into what it could be, and I think that's the message I want all of you guys to walk away from. It was a really exciting house. Along the way, in taking care of my mom, she was really a central part of all of those houses in the background and making sure that they were conducive to her. And in 2019, she passed away unexpectedly. And so I found myself in this place of my life of, I've worked all over the world in different capacities with different brands, but I stayed in Detroit. And so I took a job with AT&T. I sold my pride and joy mid-century house, and I bought the ugliest house in Dallas I could possibly find. And the reason it was because this was the top of the market. This was around 2019. Houses were staying on they weren't even, for sale sides weren't even going up before the house was sold. And this house was on the market for almost a year. It was overgrown. It was dark. It had this orange brick on the outside. And for only being a 10-year-old house, it was decorated like, once again, Dorothy had decorated it from the Michigan house. She was basically alive and well through the decor in this house. It had a really dated, heavy kitchen. It was like the peninsula reminded me of like the little T-Rex arms, you know? It was this massive kitchen and no island. It was very strange. So my wife and I, turned it into, now it's, a French contemporary, I guess. She could tell you the architectural term. But now, the neighbors think it's one of the prettiest houses on the block, and we've done some really exciting things with some of the interior design. We just finished a kitchen remodel, and it's been fun to watch the evolution. So, and by the way, we were married during COVID in the house, so the house means something special. My point is that with the right ingredients, and hopefully we're going to talk about what the right ingredients of transformation are. I wanted to step back from brand and experience and think about holistically about life, because we're all on a journey. All of us in this room are on a journey in our careers, in our companies, working with our clients. But it's fun to step back and look like a different set of context for transformation. Because I only had 15 minutes, I picked 2 projects, one from the agency side, one from corporate, to walk you through. When it was 2015, I found myself as the creative director of our agency's largest studio, which was in Detroit. It was the largest studio because that studio was in charge of the largest account, which was General Motors. So we had all global auto shows and experiential marketing for General Motors, including all 4 brands: Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, GMC. Out of those brands, Cadillac was my absolute favorite. So if you think about the heritage and legacy, the iconic nature of Cadillac over the years, this was a car and a brand that really defined the automotive segment of luxury cars in America. Throughout its time in styling, innovation, the Harley early years, the Bill Mitchell years, it was really a symbol of American innovation, power, and influence over the years, and even is today when you think about some of the technology with Super Cruise. The technology in the Cadillac vehicles and as a brand really does set a global standard, and also it's reflective of modern lifestyle. But if you and the future of mobility. But if you think about Cadillac as an icon back in 2015, so this was post-bankruptcy. This was when the brand was really confused. It had dated products, it had really dated technology. From an experiential standpoint, it was cars on carpet. I think this is where the term cars on carpet was born, because there was no exhibitry, there was no storytelling, there was no marketing. It was straight, here's a car, here's a wheel, a wheel sign that tells you how much it is and what the features are, and go to your local dealership. That was about the extent of the storytelling at the time. So being on the agency side, I had always had a fond sort of place in my heart for Cadillac. But they were really confused as a brand. If you look at all of the press, all of the vehicle reviews, even the advertising was a little bit scary at the time because the brand was really lost. There had to be transformational change that happened from the inside to really change the trajectory of the Cadillac brand and hopefully save it. And so with that, I'll introduce you to Johan and Uwe. So Johan Denison came in from Audi and Infiniti, a South African gentleman, automotive executive. Cadillac brought him in from the outside, which the story I'm about to tell you would never have happened had they not brought someone in from the outside, because it took tremendous amount of courage to make a transformational change. And then Uwe Ellinghaus on the right-hand side came from BMW Europe, so he was very familiar with the automotive industry, especially the German automotive makers, which were kind of kicking the crap out of the US automakers in terms of the luxury market. So between these 2 gentlemen, they dramatically changed the trajectory of Cadillac. They changed everything from the advertising agencies, luckily not the experiential agency, but the advertising agencies. They changed the product portfolio. They changed basically everything. They moved the headquarters from Detroit to Soho, which was a huge, huge move to break away from the parent company of General Motors. And they also launched new products. They changed the logo. They changed everything. So as the creative lead, looking at this transformational change happening within these 2 guys that did not follow the rules. They did not follow convention inside of a large automotive company. What an amazing creative opportunity for our team to come in and say, we hear you, we understand. You have the right agency that can help you evolve this idea in the reinvention of Cadillac. And so this was a brief campaign video that I'll play quickly. So from what Cadillac had been as sort of a red-blooded American automaker, very aggressive, even the products, what you saw in that was a very different approach to Cadillac. And so Dare Greatly was not only the campaign, but the ethos of the car company. And so from the design team standpoint, we had to think about what Dare Greatly meant in terms of experiential marketing. We had to reverse engineer the 3 pillars that Uwe and Johan had launched, which was this idea of being bold, being sophisticated, and having optimism in everything that we do. That significantly changes the overall experience from what Cadillac had always been. So there's a very long design process, which was kind of the whole story, but I have to skip over this because I could nerd out all day long about the type of creatives that we brought together, multidisciplinary team to really think about everything from fashion to materials to lighting to content, all of those things working together in a multisensory capacity to really bring a very different experiential look to market. So I think I've got the animation next. We, again, bold, sophisticated, and optimistic, but also 100% New York. We wanted to capture the essence of what the city really stood for, and I think the image on the right does a nice job also if you look out the window. There's beautiful architecture, but it's also punctuated by a certain amount of metal and material and structure that makes those beautiful facades actually work. And so we created something that we felt was an appropriate expression of the brand. Just to save time, I'll skip forward. But let's just say it was daring. We took Dare Greatly to a different level. This was a 100,000-pound structure that had to be set up in 4 days and had to travel around the world. It had to support a feature flagship vehicle, its rest of the portfolio. It had to have fully operational executive offices behind it. This was a feat of engineering, of design, and it matched the same enthusiasm, the same daring mindset that the president of the brand and the chief marketing officer had as well. As I said, you could not execute something like this if you did not have 2 guys at the helm using leadership to pave the way for a vision that no one could have ever imagined. So it was a remarkable project. When I think about all the projects I've worked on in my career, this is one that for me was really just a very exceptional piece of design and piece of marketing that really connected to the brand. And then, of course, we got to write the global playbook. So it wasn't enough just to execute once or execute throughout the United States. We had to design this thing to be able to travel globally. So we got the opportunity as the AOR to launch the same exact playbook in China, actually throughout Asia, throughout Europe, and throughout the Middle East. So that expression was able to be replicated everywhere around the world using our partners, but one single design studio. And of course, we got some accolades along the way. So when you look at transformation and all the principles we talked about, the simple principles of like my journey with home flipping, the journey of Cadillac, you can start to see that there's principles that repeat themselves over and over and over. And that really brings me to AT&T. So as I said, when my mom passed, I had this opportunity to sort of change my path in life, and I decided to move to the corporate side and move down to Dallas. And so I was, when I was thinking about a company that wanted to bring somebody like me in-house, which you don't often hear. Experiential marketing is one thing, but experiential design and creative is a little bit different. So I was immediately intrigued, but then I did a Google search, of where their experiential program was. And if you can imagine going from Cadillac and traveling around the world with, one of the premier automotive makers, and then, looking at the experiential marketing program for AT&T, it was like, I don't know. But one thing was really interesting to me, and so yeah, that was a bit of like, okay. But what was really interesting to me was this idea of moving from execution and activation and jumping into the marketing side, and then not only being in marketing, but also thinking about the piece of marketing that's really responsible for paving way for a brand to live. The brand creation standpoint. And I thought, if I could have this kind of impact on the agency side, what would happen if I jumped to the corporate side and created change from inside? Could AT&T handle it? Could I handle it? Would this be possible? And there were certainly days where I didn't think it would be possible. But for us at AT&T, I want to talk a little bit about purpose. It was a long journey, but a couple of years ago we launched our new purpose, which is it's very, very simple, and I think there's artistry and simplicity. It's very simple, connecting people to greater possibility. That we, as a telecommunications company, as a connectivity provider, our goal is to connect you to whatever possibility you need in life. If that's making a phone call, if that's making a text, a video conference, if that's interfacing with your kids or your family, or entertainment or gaming. Our goal is to connect you with your greatest possibility, and we do it through 3 core tenets, which is expertise, simplicity, and inspiration. And not that anybody would sort of walk away with that. We always ask ourselves as marketers, what do we want people to walk away with? And it's usually only one thing. It's not that, oh, that was really simple. It was, what we really want people to walk away with is this idea that AT&T connected me to something that I didn't think was possible. And that's as simple as it gets. But from a design standpoint and a strategy standpoint, the expertise, simplicity, and inspiration is our North Star, and it really guides us on our journey. Here's a brief video that talks about our purpose.
Connect 2 dots and change the whole plot. Connect one day, change a long week. Connect to one thought, change what you speak. Connecting these hearts, we change their flow. Plan the path, force routed road. Connect with uncertainty and change. No, plots that seeds that we grow. Connect and change what you want. What do you want? Kids on the keys. Find it. You're gonna lose it again. Don't like the heat? Change the color. Scared of the storms, change their thunder. Don't share the dream another. Connect. Change. The face, a place. Dance the towns, the now, the vow, the news, the news. Fight the night, the light. Connect and change. Connecting changes everything. AT&T.
So we're really excited about how our purpose is impacting our marketing, but I want to take you back a couple years. So when I started at AT&T and I showed you some of the research I did, we didn't have that purpose. That purpose is a couple of years old now. But 5 years ago, we were in a sort of a strange place, especially experientially, where we were doing some really odd things. And I'll give you a good example. So we had the foresight to enter into gaming and esports long before anybody else did, which is great. But we made the mistake in thinking that we had to change our brand to connect with gamers. We had to look cool. We had to fit in with them. And if you know gamers, or anybody who's a serious gamer, you'll know that brands that are not authentic or genuine in trying to actually understand gamers tend to be, outcast. And so while we were showing up, we weren't really integrating with gamers. We weren't making life better for gamers. We certainly were not helping them connect. We were showing up, and I think that's where mediocrity comes in a little bit, right? We sort of were doing it. We were trying to do some things that were not landing. And so when I came into AT&T, I was asked to look at not only the experiential component of where are we showing up and what do we look like and what's the storytelling, but also what's the right way to approach gamers. How can AT&T actually connect with gamers in a way that creates emotional bond with the brand and helps elevate the brand? So this intersection had really not been explored. It's a very simple idea, right? Where do our brand values and gamer brand values intersect? And if we can find intersection, we can find common ground, just like anybody in any relationship, we can build a strategy around why we're there. And so after a lot of work, and again, these slides, I laugh because they make it look so simple. And here they are. Here are the 4 shared values. But this is months and months of work and bringing really smart people to the table. We found really strong shared values between us as a brand and gamers. Some of these I won't read all 4 of them, but like technology for meaningful connections that we use and develop technology for more than just a phone call. Gamers definitely use technology for more than just a phone call. It's how they game. It's the most important piece other than their gaming skills and the gaming platform. It's the fidelity and the latency or lack of latency that's responsible for them. Connection to the community, often being misunderstood. So it's about finding the common ground and building empathy that needs to be part of that grassroots strategy. And if you can do that, then you can really think about, okay, what are we doing here? Since we have such common ground, what is our mission? What is our role here? And so for AT&T Gaming, it exists to fuel that symbiotic relationship between a gamer and technology. between gamers and gaming worlds. It's a very simple idea, but it eventually manifests itself into a visual metaphor, which we call the portal. So it makes something that's intangible or invisible, which is connection, visible inside of marketing and advertising and experiential marketing. So the portal has now evolved over the past 3 years into everything from broadcast to physical experiences to virtual to meta. That's VR chat on the right there in the middle. So that simple idea of shared values turning into mission and purpose, turning into a visual metaphor that can then be designed against, has dramatically changed the way that AT&T markets to gamers and in esports. Of course, we've tested against this other brands that use their master brand or logo slab, and we've seen considerable measurable data on how thinking more contextually relevant, thinking more micro audience, actually moves the marketing needle a lot further. We also thought multisensory, so it's not just about, again, experiences, environments, it's also about digital spaces, it's also about our brand assets. So in addition to one of the first completely CG brand identities, we also looked at audio. So you guys probably know the AT&T 4-note Sonic, which sounds like, I don't know if you can hear that. It's our 4-note Sonic. For gaming, we modified that, and we worked with an amazing audio brand studio in Germany to modify that when we're talking to gamers. Let me get a little closer. So it's the same 4 notes, but it's a little bit more technical. And when we're talking a little bit more epic, say like Fortnite gaming, and even when we're doing broadcast and countdown clocks. So you'll notice the 4 notes are actually baked into the countdown clock right here. So it's a small little nod, but it's every one of those pieces. And what I love about experiential marketing is this idea that we're using behavioral science, we're using multisensory strategies and tactics to really embed ourselves in both the conscious and unconscious mind, right? So even though, you think gamers probably hear the 4-note Sonic? Probably not. But if they hear the opening title card with our Sonic and they hear the countdown clock and they see our brand, you stitch those together and, both conscious and unconscious, all of a sudden you start to embed yourselves deeper and deeper in that memory bank. That's a little sizzle video of all those assets, which I'm going to skip for time. So again, if you can't tell here, the rhythm of this presentation is that even when I didn't think that AT&T would let me have any fun with their brand, and I was like, there's no way they're going to let me do a completely CG brand identity system, and I don't think we're really going to be able to transform gaming and esports. Here we're 5 years later, and we're actually on the second iteration right now of this identity. We're actually updating this complete package right now. The guidelines are being written as I speak. So that really brings me to the last part of my presentation here, which is to talk about the transformation of AT&T design. A couple years into being on the corporate side, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know. We're doing great work, but I'm not sure if AT&T is really capable of seeing the value of design through the corporate lens of driving business forward. I'm not sure. We compare ourselves to a lot of other brands, but a lot of those other brands have had a history with AT&T, a history with design being part of the leadership. So it took a lot of work, but I'm really excited to talk to you about, AT&T is known for design, and a lot of us just don't know it. In fact, Saul Bass, which is the designer on the right-hand side, really created the modern idea of AT&T decades ago with the first logo of the globe, when we moved to the globe logo. And so that transition for our brand and what our brand meant really changed the entire consumer trajectory of the way that they viewed our brand. So today we have the first studio in 150 years. We have the first design studio. We now have our first design gathering and a group. We have our charter, which is really about this idea of building enduring brand love through expertise and leadership, and really making every marketing dollar work harder in the space to deliver shareholder value. And so with that, again, personal life, hopefully now you guys know me a little bit. Agency side, corporate life, transformation's possible, no matter what you're looking at. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.